What if the most powerful thing about you is the part no one knows? Think about that. Not the titles, not the posts, not the achievements you let the world see, but the quiet thoughts, the battles fought in silence, the dreams you nurture in private. In a world where people share everything, where your worth is often measured by how much attention you can grab, keeping something for yourself almost feels wrong. But it's not wrong. It's rare. And rare things carry power. We've been told that if people don't see it, it doesn't count. That if you don't announce your progress, your healing, your ambition, you're falling behind. So we talk, we post, we explain. We open doors that were never meant to be open. And slowly, piece by piece, we give ourselves away. We hand out our energy to people who haven't earned it. We look for approval in the eyes of strangers, and then we wonder why we feel empty even after being seen. But what if you didn't need to explain yourself to be complete? What if privacy isn't a weakness but a weapon? Keeping people out doesn't mean you're cold. It means you understand the value of what's inside. Your peace, your growth, your plans, your past. These are sacred. They are not currency for approval. They are the foundation of your strength. When you choose to hold them close, you take back control. You become harder to shake, harder to read, and harder to manipulate. The truth is, the people who move the world are often the ones you never saw coming. They weren't loud, they weren't everywhere. They didn't need to be, because power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just shows up and shifts everything. That can be you. You don't have to prove anything. You just have to know who you are, and protect that knowing with everything you've got. This is more than just about privacy. It's about presence. When you're not busy explaining yourself, you get to live. You get to focus. You get to build. You're not drained by reactions. You're driven by purpose. And the best part? You become untouchable. Not because you're hiding, but because you're rooted, grounded, whole. You don't owe anyone your story. You owe yourself your peace. So why should you keep watching? Because this isn't just about being quiet. It's about becoming unshakable. This message will remind you of everything the world tries to make you forget. That your strength is not in being seen, but in standing firm. That your power is not in what you say, but in what you protect. And by the end, you'll realize something most people never do. Your silence is not emptiness. It's energy. And when you learn to guard it, nothing and no one can take it from you. Stay with this message. Let it remind you who you really are. Silence isn't weakness. It's the place where real strength is born. When you choose not to speak every thought, not to share every move, you create space. And in that space, you hear what the world drowns out, your own voice. The one that's been buried under noise, pressure, expectation. The voice that's not trying to please anyone, not chasing validation, not performing for applause. That voice is yours, and it's powerful. Most people never hear it. They're too busy talking, too busy proving, too busy reacting. But when you sit with yourself in stillness, something shifts. You stop living for how you look and start living for what's real. You stop trying to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. And you realize, clarity doesn't come from more noise. It comes from less. The less you say, the more you see. The more you hold back, the more you understand who and what deserves your energy. That's the gift of silence. It gives you back control. People think silence is emptiness, but it's actually depth. There's a reason the strongest people you meet are often the quietest. It's not because they don't feel. It's because they've felt too deeply to waste their voice on things that don't matter. They've learned the hard way that not everyone is meant to carry your truth. That sometimes the safest place for your dreams, your pain, your healing, is within. Not because you're hiding, but because you've finally learned how to protect what's sacred. You don't need the world to understand you. You don't need approval to be whole. The more you explain, the more you give away your power. Not everything needs to be seen. Not everything deserves an audience. Silence allows you to move without resistance, to grow without interference, to prepare without pressure. It gives you the ability to surprise the world with your results, not your promises. And that surprise, that quiet rise, is what makes it so powerful. Every time you choose to be silent, you're choosing focus. You're choosing presence. You're choosing not to get caught up in distractions that don't serve your purpose. And that choice isn't easy. It's tempting to speak, to explain, to be seen. But growth doesn't need an audience. It just needs consistency, discipline, peace. Peace is where your strength multiplies. And silence is how you guard that peace. Don't underestimate how strong it makes you to simply say nothing. To let people think what they want while you keep building. To let curiosity rise around you while you stay rooted in your path. The storm isn't loud until it arrives. And when it does, it changes everything. So keep your peace. Keep your silence. Let the world talk while you move in truth. That's how you rise. Not by noise, but by stillness that cannot be shaken. The voice within you is enough. And when you listen to it, you stop performing. And you start becoming. There's a reason you feel exhausted when you explain too much. A reason you feel empty after revealing pieces of yourself to people who never earned the right to hold them. Every time you overshare, you hand out pieces of your identity. You scatter parts of your soul in places that don't know how to protect them. And eventually, you look around and wonder why you feel disconnected from yourself. It's because you gave too much to be understood. You traded depth for exposure, and exposure without discernment drains you. Not everyone is meant to know your thoughts. Not everyone deserves a seat at the table of your inner world. Your peace, your struggle, your direction. These are not for public consumption. They're not performance pieces. They are the raw materials of your transformation. When you share them too freely, you delay your own healing. You invite voices that don't understand your path to speak over it, and those voices can confuse your vision, dilute your focus, and chip away at your confidence. You owe it to yourself to stop giving that power away. You don't need to be seen to be valid. You don't need to be understood to be right. The deepest parts of your journey are meant to be quiet, not because they're not important, but because they're sacred. What you're building in silence is far more valuable than what you could ever prove through words. Real power is not loud. It's not shared in fragments. It's cultivated through discipline, intention, and time. And those things grow best in silence. The truth is, we often overshare because we fear being invisible. We fear being misunderstood, so we overcompensate by explaining ourselves to anyone who will listen. But that fear is a trap, because the more you explain, the more you lose the essence of what makes your journey yours. You dilute the mystery, you remove the protection, and you create an opening for doubt, comparison, and criticism to walk right in. That kind of vulnerability isn't strength. It's exposure without purpose. Choose instead to build in privacy. Let your actions speak. Let your presence carry the weight of your progress. The less they know, the less they can distract you. The less they can judge what they don't understand. The more you stay focused on what's unfolding within, the stronger it becomes. Your mind clears, your heart steadies, your spirit aligns, and you begin to feel whole again, not because the world affirmed you, but because you stopped needing it to. You have nothing to prove. Your value was never in what others could see. It's always been in what you choose to guard. So hold that power. Don't explain it. Don't perform it. Just live it. Let them wonder. Let them guess. Let your silence be the shield that protects your becoming. Because the moment you stop oversharing is the moment you start reclaiming your strength. There's a quiet power in being misunderstood on purpose. In letting people make assumptions, form opinions, and draw conclusions while you say nothing. Not because you're afraid, not because you're weak, but because you've reached a point where your energy is too valuable to waste on explanations. You don't owe clarity to anyone who hasn't earned your truth. Silence is not retreat, it's control. It's the refusal to allow outside noise to shape your inner reality. Let them think they know you. Let them guess your next move. There is freedom in detachment. When you stop trying to correct every misunderstanding, you start to reclaim your focus. You begin to see that people only understand from their level of awareness, not yours. And when someone is committed to misunderstanding you, no amount of words will shift their mind. So stop trying. Stop shrinking yourself for the comfort of others. Stop over-explaining your boundaries, your decisions, your silence. The more you explain, the more you invite resistance. The more you stay silent, the more you build presence. Mystery is not a flaw. It's a shield. It gives you room to think clearly, to move freely, to evolve without interruption. People can't attack what they can't see. They can't sabotage what they don't know exists. When your moves are private, your mission becomes untouchable. Not everyone needs access. Not everyone deserves it. And the more you protect your space, the more powerful your steps become. This isn't about hiding, it's about holding. Holding your energy, your vision, your identity with honor. In a world that urges you to spill everything, keeping some things to yourself is an act of rebellion. It's also an act of healing. Because when you stop performing, you finally start listening. You hear the whispers of your own wisdom. You feel the weight of your own purpose. And you begin to realize your life was never meant to be an open book. It was meant to be a sacred text, read only by those who show up with care. Choose to be unknown. Not because you're small, but because you're deep. Let people wonder. Let them doubt. Let them create stories. None of it changes who you are. And none of it affects what you're building in silence. Keep walking with intention. Keep protecting your inner world. Let your results speak where your words never will. That's where your strength lives. Not in being loud, but in being rooted. When you no longer feel the need to be understood, you unlock something unshakable inside you. Peace, focus, clarity. You stop reaching outward and start anchoring inward. And from that place, nothing can move you. Not opinions, not rumors, not expectations. You become steady, powerful, unbothered. So guard your silence, embrace your mystery. Let your quiet become the loudest thing about you, because what they don't know about you is exactly what keeps you powerful. The more you grow, the less you need to speak. Maturity teaches you that silence is not just peace, it's strategy. Not every reaction deserves your energy. Not every opinion deserves your correction. You begin to see how expensive your attention is, how sacred your thoughts are, and how dangerous it can be to give them to the wrong people. Growth sharpens your awareness. You start choosing your battles, your words, and most of all, your access. And the more intentional you become, the more powerful your presence becomes. There's something unbreakable about a person who no longer needs to be seen to feel real. Someone who no longer needs validation to feel worthy, because that kind of strength can't be manipulated. It doesn't dance for attention. It doesn't beg to be accepted. It simply exists, anchored in truth, guided by purpose, untouched by noise. That is what silence builds. Not invisibility, but resilience. Not hiding, but mastery. When you pull your energy back from the chaos, you don't disappear. You rise above it. You must learn to be comfortable with people not knowing what's going on in your life. Let them wonder where you went. Let them question your silence. Let them fill the blanks with assumptions. Because while they speculate, you elevate. While they talk, you build. While they guess, you grow. There is nothing more powerful than walking your path quietly, watching your life shift, watching your strength multiply, all without a word. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. You don't need to show them the seed to prove something is growing. Let your life bloom in its own time. Let your breakthrough speak louder than your explanations ever could. Don't dilute your purpose by putting it on display too early. Some things lose their power when they're exposed too soon. Guard your vision, guard your healing, guard your transformation. Not out of fear, but out of reverence for how sacred they truly are. The more you keep within, the more solid you become. You stop bending to be understood. You stop craving reassurance. You start trusting yourself at a level most never reach. And with that trust comes peace, real peace. The kind that doesn't shake under pressure. The kind that doesn't collapse under judgment. The kind that whispers, keep going, even when no one is clapping. So step back. Hold your fire. Keep your voice for the things that matter. Let your silence be your strength. Not because you're hiding from the world, but because you've finally learned to rise above it. This is the path of those who lead themselves first. Quietly, boldly, unshaken. You don't need the world to watch your every move. You just need to keep moving, keep becoming, keep building in silence. Because when the time is right, your life will echo louder than any words ever could. When you no longer need to announce your progress, that's when the real transformation begins. Not because others see it, but because you finally feel it. You start waking up with clarity instead of confusion. You move with quiet confidence, not shaky pride. And in that silence, you realize how much energy you used to waste trying to be understood. Now, that energy is yours again. And with it, you build things that can't be shaken by opinions, or weakened by noise. There's a calm that grows when you step away from the urge to be seen. A strength that forms when your value is no longer tied to how visible you are. You start measuring yourself differently, not by what people say, but by what you know within. You stop chasing recognition and start chasing alignment. You stop trying to impress and start trying to become. The pressure fades, the pretending fades. What remains is honest, unapologetic, whole. That's when everything changes. You realize that most noise is distraction. Most conversations are surface. Most attention is fleeting. And when you stop needing it, you become dangerous to anything that once tried to control you. People won't understand your silence, and that's the point. Because silence doesn't serve them. It serves you. It gives you room to listen to your own spirit, to cut through the lies, to hear what's real. That clarity is rare, and it's only found when you step out of the spotlight and return to your center. You weren't made to live in performance. You weren't born to explain your worth. You were built for depth, not display. And sometimes the only way to protect that depth is to go quiet. To stop giving pieces of yourself to people who only want to observe, not understand. You don't need their attention. You need your own, your full attention on your healing, your growth, your direction. That's what changes your life. Not applause, but alignment. It's not easy to pull back, not easy to go silent in a world addicted to noise. But it's necessary, because in that silence, you stop reacting and start choosing. You choose your peace over pressure. You choose progress over performance. You choose yourself. And every time you make that choice, your power deepens. Your voice may grow quieter, but your presence grows heavier. You start walking into rooms differently, not with arrogance, but with unshakable purpose. This is what people don't understand. They think silence is retreat. They think privacy is weakness. But real strength doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to be explained. It simply is. And when you learn to walk in that kind of strength, you stop waiting for the world to get it. You let them think what they want. And while they talk, you rise, quietly, steadily, powerfully, because you don't need to be seen to be real. You just need to be true. When you no longer need the world to witness your every step, you step into a power most people never touch. It's not the kind of power that shouts or demands recognition. It's the kind that builds in silence and walks in certainty. It's the strength that comes from knowing who you are without anyone else's permission. The moment you stop explaining yourself is the moment you reclaim every ounce of energy that was leaking through validation. That energy becomes momentum. That momentum becomes discipline. And that discipline becomes transformation. You don't have to be loud to be strong. You don't need a stage to prove your growth. Growth is quiet. Growth is choosing discipline over attention. Growth is saying no to noise and yes to peace. It happens in the stillness behind the scenes when no one is clapping. And that's why it's so powerful. Because it's real. When no one's watching, and you still show up, still push forward, still choose character over comfort, that's when you become unshakable. That's when the foundation forms. Not made of opinions but of truth. People crave validation because it's easy. It's a shortcut to feeling seen. But feeling seen isn't the same as being whole. Wholeness comes when you no longer need to be seen to feel grounded. It comes when you no longer give away parts of yourself just to feel accepted. Wholeness is built in silence. When you let go of needing to prove, needing to justify, needing to please, you don't owe your journey to anyone. It's yours. And the less you share it with the wrong people, the stronger it becomes. You are allowed to protect your energy. You are allowed to grow privately. You are allowed to hold your progress close to your chest like something sacred. Because it is. You are sacred. And your life doesn't need to be put on display to be meaningful. Let them wonder. Let them assume. Their version of you isn't your responsibility. You're not here to fit their narrative. You're here to write your own. So don't rush to speak. Don't rush to be known. Let your results echo where your voice is silent. Let your peace speak louder than any explanation could. The more you protect what matters, the more powerful it becomes. There is strength in silence, but more than that, there is freedom. Freedom from opinions, freedom from performance, freedom from the constant need to be understood. And when you taste that freedom, you never want to go back. This is your life, your calling, your transformation. It doesn't need to be witnessed to be real. It just needs to be honored. So honor it with silence. Honor it with discipline. Honor it by becoming so deeply rooted that nothing outside of you can shake what's building inside. Speak less, do more, and let your life speak for itself, clearly, boldly, powerfully, without ever needing to say a word. The strongest version of you will not be the one who shares everything. It will be the one who knows what to hold back. There is wisdom in discretion. There is power in restraint. Not because you're hiding, but because you're finally discerning what deserves to be revealed and what is meant to stay sacred. You begin to understand that growth isn't loud. Healing isn't public. Breakthroughs don't need announcements. The more deeply you evolve, the less you need to explain. You don't seek to be understood anymore. You seek to be whole. People will want access to parts of you they haven't earned. They'll ask questions, not out of care, but out of curiosity. They'll pry for details, not to support, but to judge. And if you're not careful, you'll keep handing out pieces of your soul to people who only want to hold them long enough to measure them. But you're not meant to be measured by others. You're meant to be known by yourself. And sometimes, the only way to protect that knowing is through silence. The world rewards noise, but real fulfillment is found in stillness. Stillness is where you meet your truth. It's where you confront the fears you used to cover with performance. It's where you face the emptiness you once tried to fill with approval. And when you stop running from that space, you step into a version of yourself that no one can fabricate. You don't need applause. You don't need recognition. You just need alignment. That is what changes your life from the inside out. Let people misinterpret you. Let them misunderstand. You're not here to be decoded by every passerby. You're here to live a life of meaning, built on values no one else has to validate. That's why silence is your strength. Because in silence, you can build without interference. In silence, you can listen without distortion. And in silence, you can rise without needing permission. You don't have to explain your decisions. You don't have to defend your peace. You don't have to make your healing digestible for anyone else. Your journey is yours, and it deserves the privacy of sacred growth. That doesn't make you cold. It makes you careful. You've seen what happens when you open too soon, share too much, or trust too quickly. Now you know better. Now you move with clarity. Now you protect your becoming like the treasure it is. Quiet strength intimidates the loud and unsettles the insecure. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something right. You've shifted from performance to purpose. from noise to presence. And when your presence is grounded, you don't need to speak for it to be felt. So stay grounded. Stay focused. Let your silence create space for transformation. And when you emerge, because you will, it won't be with noise. It will be with impact. It will be with truth. And it will be undeniable. You are not obligated to open your life like a book for people who only skim for flaws. Just because they ask doesn't mean they deserve an answer. Just because they watch doesn't mean they understand. Your silence is not rudeness. It is clarity. It is choosing who gets access, who gets insight, who gets space. And in a world that constantly demands exposure, choosing privacy is a radical act of self-respect. You don't owe your journey to anyone who hasn't walked beside you through it. You don't owe your vulnerability to those who view it as entertainment. There is power in the unseen. Not everything sacred should be shared. Not every success should be broadcast. Not every struggle should be explained. Some things are meant to be lived, not displayed. You don't have to prove your growth for it to be real. You don't have to post your healing for it to be valid. What's happening inside you, your breakthroughs, your inner battles, your quiet victories, those are yours. And keeping them private doesn't make them less powerful. It makes them more yours. You are allowed to evolve quietly. You are allowed to outgrow without announcing. You are allowed to walk away without explaining. When you release the need to be understood, you set yourself free. You free yourself from the prison of perception. You stop shaping your path around approval. You begin to walk in truth, no matter who applauds. That's where courage lives. That's where transformation roots itself deep, not in noise, but in truth, not in being seen, but in being whole. Growth often happens in silence because it requires focus. Real change demands your full presence, not divided by attention or drained by constant performance. In your quiet seasons you gather strength. In your silent spaces you find direction. And while others may think you've disappeared, you're actually returning to what matters. You're shedding what no longer fits. You're refining your voice, not for them, but for yourself. That's the kind of work that creates lifelong impact. Let them wonder. Let them speculate. You are not here to satisfy curiosity. You are here to build something that lasts. Something that is real, steady, unshakable. Let your silence do the heavy lifting. Let your life reveal what your words never needed to explain. The ones meant for you will never need the full story to respect your journey, and the ones who demand access rarely deserve it. That's how you know who to trust. That's how you protect your peace. This world teaches you to speak constantly, but wisdom knows when to be quiet, and there is no shame in that. There is strength in knowing when to hold back, when to listen, when to protect your light from those who would dim it. So guard your mind, guard your growth. Let your quiet become your armor, and as you rise in silence, let every step forward be a declaration that needs no voice, because your life, your strength, your presence will say everything. Silence becomes your sanctuary when you finally realize that not everything needs to be shared to be real. You don't need permission to protect your process. You don't need consensus to walk your path. The moment you stop trying to explain yourself to people who aren't committed to understanding you, you begin to reclaim your time, your peace, your energy. And those are the very things that allow you to rise above the noise that once kept you small. You're not here to be digestible. You're here to be whole. Wholeness doesn't need an audience. It needs alignment. And alignment often demands solitude. Let go of the urge to constantly express what you're building. Let go of the pressure to prove that you're progressing. The most powerful transformations happen when no one is watching, because that's when you're honest. That's when the masks drop. That's when you stop performing and start becoming. It's not about who notices. It's about who you are when no one is clapping. That's the foundation of self-respect, doing what's right without needing validation. You're not chasing praise. You're cultivating purpose. Privacy isn't secrecy. It's stewardship. It's choosing to protect what's sacred instead of serving it up for judgment. It's refusing to let the world dilute the power of your progress with shallow opinions and empty noise. When you keep your growth close, it deepens. When you guard your healing, it strengthens. What you protect multiplies, and what you share too soon can be stolen, distorted, or misunderstood. You are not hiding. You are building wisely. The less you explain, the more you align with your higher self. The part of you that knows the truth doesn't need to be shouted. It needs to be lived. Your inner peace will never come from convincing others. It comes from showing up day after day, doing the work only you can see. The work that changes your habits, sharpens your mind, quiets your ego. That's not for them, that's for you. And that's why it matters. People who don't understand your silence never truly heard your pain. People who demand your details often don't deserve your trust. You don't owe transparency to the world. You owe integrity to yourself. Hold your progress like gold. Not everything valuable should be visible. Some things shine brightest in the dark, where they're safe from judgment and allowed to mature in peace. That's where real strength is born, not in performance, but in private perseverance. You're not becoming less visible. You're becoming more rooted. And the deeper the roots, the stronger the growth. So stay grounded. Keep building. Let your results speak. Let your peace speak. Let your life speak. You don't need to explain what's changing in you. You just need to keep changing. Keep evolving. And one day, the silence that once protected you will become the power that defines you. Not with noise, not with approval, but with quiet, undeniable clarity. If they don't know your plans, they can't disrupt them. If they don't know your next move, they can't sabotage it. Silence protects vision. It guards the blueprint of what you're building when it's still fragile. Not everyone has the heart to support your becoming. Some only watch to compete, compare, or critique. And that is why your most powerful progress must happen quietly. You are not required to expose every step. You are not obligated to include people in places they were never meant to grow with you. The higher you climb, the more sacred your silence must become. You've learned the hard way. Giving too much of yourself to the wrong people leaves you drained, misjudged, and second-guessing the very path you were once sure of. But now you're learning to move differently. You're no longer seeking validation for every decision. You're no longer trying to convince others of your direction. You're listening to something deeper, something still, something sacred. That's the power of inner alignment. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't need applause. It simply knows. Let others chase attention. Let them broadcast their every step. Let them perform for the crowd. You are choosing something higher. You're choosing purpose over performance, substance over show. That's why you feel the need to withdraw. That's why you crave distance. You're not cold. You're focused. And in this season, focus is everything. Every distraction has a cost. Every unnecessary conversation pulls you further from clarity. Your silence isn't an absence. It's an investment in direction. It's how you return to yourself. Not everyone will understand your quiet. Some will assume it's distance. Some will label it arrogance. But that's not your burden to carry. Their assumptions do not define your truth. What matters is that you are protecting your growth. You are choosing depth over display. You are building something that doesn't just look good, it feels real, it stands strong, it lasts. That kind of strength requires silence. That kind of foundation needs solitude. Because you cannot plant seeds in public and expect them to grow without being trampled. There is honor in keeping your next steps to yourself. There is wisdom in letting your results speak before your words do. You are not falling behind. You are pulling ahead in ways the world can't yet see. And that's okay. Greatness often moves in silence until it no longer has to. So let others wonder. Let them guess. You owe no one access to the sacred work you're doing inside. You owe yourself the privacy to build it without interference. Stay steady, stay grounded. Keep your fire lit but your door closed. Let the silence fuel your focus, not your fear. Let your peace be proof that you are on the right path. You're not lost. You're becoming. And when the time is right, everything you've built in silence will speak volumes. Not with noise, not with drama, but with unshakable, undeniable, unstoppable power. Not everything sacred was meant to be spoken. Some things lose their strength when exposed too soon. Some truths are still forming, still fragile, still being shaped in silence. And that silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. Because when your life begins to shift, the noise of others can pull you off course before you've found your footing. Every word you share invites opinion. Every detail you reveal invites influence. But this is your transformation. It doesn't need decoration. It needs discipline. And discipline grows strongest in the absence of distraction. You are not withholding to be mysterious. You are withholding to be intentional. Because you understand that what you feed grows. And every time you talk about what you're building instead of actually building it, you lose momentum. You leak energy. You invite resistance. Silence helps you preserve that energy. It gives your vision room to breathe, to settle, to take root without pressure. It allows your instincts to sharpen without being drowned out by noise. And right now, clarity is more valuable than attention. Focus is more powerful than being known. Most people speak to be seen, but you are learning to be still to become strong. Stillness sharpens your hearing. Stillness reveals what the noise has been covering. When you stop sharing everything, you start seeing clearly. You notice who checks in only when they need something. You notice who disappears when you stop performing. You notice who is watching only to measure your progress, not support it. That clarity doesn't come when you speak. It comes when you go quiet. And it's in that quiet that you realize you never needed to prove anything. Not your pace, not your purpose, not your worth. The only person who needs to understand your journey is you, because you're the one carrying the weight. You're the one sacrificing behind closed doors. You're the one staying up late, starting over, rising again when no one claps. And if the world never applauds your process, it's okay. Because you're not building for noise. You're building for endurance. You're building for impact. And that impact begins with integrity. Integrity means doing the right thing, even when no one sees it. Especially when no one sees it. And the more you lean into that, the more peace you gain. Peace isn't found in being known. Peace is found in knowing yourself. It's found in knowing that you're walking in truth, that you're building something real, that you're becoming someone stronger, quieter, and more grounded than ever before. You don't need everyone to see it. You just need to keep going, keep growing, keep protecting what matters. And when it's time, when the roots are deep and the vision is ready, it won't be your words that reveal your strength. It will be your life, the way you walk, the way you hold yourself, the way your presence speaks without a sound. There is power in restraint. When you choose not to reveal, not to react, not to respond, you step into control, not of others, but of yourself. And that is the foundation of strength, discipline over emotion, purpose over impulse, clarity over chaos. You don't have to prove anything to anyone when you're at peace with your own direction. When you stop seeking to be understood, you gain something far more valuable, the ability to move without interference. That is the gift of silence. It gives you back your power. It centers you in the storm of noise. It reminds you that real progress needs no witness. Too often people share in hopes of validation. They speak out of insecurity, hoping someone will confirm what they aren't sure about. But when you speak from insecurity, you invite confusion. You blur your own vision. You open doors to influence that was never meant to guide you. Not everyone has earned a front row seat to your transformation. Not everyone should be trusted with your battles, your dreams, your process. Some people aren't interested in your growth. They're just curious about your movements, and that curiosity can carry more danger than support. It can shape how you see yourself if you're not rooted in truth. When you stop over-explaining, you stop overextending. When you stop trying to be understood, you stop bending. You become still. And in that stillness, you get stronger. You hear your own voice louder. You trust it more. You no longer need confirmation because you have conviction. Conviction is quiet, but it's unshakable. It's not loud, but it's immovable. And once you build from that place, you stop seeking approval and start honoring alignment. You are not distant because you're cold. You are distant because you're focused. Because there is something greater calling you, something deeper than surface conversation, something more valuable than temporary connection. You are choosing depth, and depth requires separation. You cannot swim to the bottom while clinging to shallow distractions. You must be willing to release what no longer feeds your focus. That includes people. That includes habits. That includes the constant need to be seen. It's not about hiding. It's about healing. It's about making room for clarity. It's about giving yourself space to evolve without interruption. Growth is personal. It doesn't always need an audience. Sometimes the most sacred work happens when no one knows it's happening. And when that work is complete, you won't have to announce it. People will feel the shift in your energy. They will see the strength in your silence. They will recognize the change without explanation. You owe no one access to your process. You owe yourself the full expression of your truth. So keep it close, keep it quiet. Let the noise pass you by. Let the world wonder. Let the silence carry your focus. Let your actions speak when the time is right. Because what you're building is not just for applause, it's for impact. And impact, real impact, begins in silence. Growth that is real doesn't ask for recognition. It asks for commitment. It asks for discipline, solitude, and the courage to go deep when everyone else stays on the surface. When you refuse to be distracted by the need to be noticed, you become dangerous in the best way, not to others, but to the limits that once held you back. The less people know about what you're doing, the more freedom you have to evolve without opinion. And freedom is where transformation begins. Not the kind of freedom that comes from escape, but the kind that comes from alignment. Quiet alignment. Unshakable alignment. You begin to realize that your energy is a currency, and you've spent too much of it trying to explain yourself to people who never really listened. You've handed over your peace in the name of being understood. But you're not here to be decoded. You're not here to be simplified into something small enough for others to label. You're here to expand. And expansion requires silence. Not because you have something to hide, but because you have something to protect. You are protecting your clarity, your mission, your calling. You are building something that doesn't need applause to be real. It just needs you to keep going. The more you grow, the more selective you become. Not out of pride, but out of purpose. Because not everyone is meant to walk with you. Some are only meant to watch. And when they no longer have access to your updates, they may create their own stories. Let them. You don't owe anyone a version of your life that keeps them comfortable. You owe yourself the space to evolve without explanation. And in that space, your voice gets clearer. Your steps get steadier. Your power becomes visible, even in silence. Every time you pull back from the need to broadcast your progress, you gain momentum. Not everything that matters needs to be visible. Some of the most important battles are fought in the quiet, and some of the greatest breakthroughs happen when no one is watching. That is where strength is forged, not in the spotlight but in the shadows, where it's just you, your pain, your purpose, and your persistence. That is where you rise. Let them wonder. Let them question. Let them try to fill in the blanks. You have nothing to prove. Your life will prove it in time. The strength you're building now will speak when you no longer need to. And when the moment comes, when your actions align with your silence, no words will be necessary. Your presence will be the message. Your discipline will be the evidence. Your peace will be the proof. This is the season where silence isn't empty. It's loaded with purpose, loaded with power, loaded with decisions that are shaping the next version of you. Stay in it. Stay grounded. Stay focused. Because the more silent you become, the louder your future will speak. When you stop needing the world to understand your silence, you begin to understand your strength. There is a rare kind of power in being misunderstood and still choosing peace. When others misread your quiet as weakness, you do not defend yourself. You do not explain. You rise. You redirect the energy inward, where it builds a fire no one can see but everyone will one day feel. That is the essence of restraint. Holding back when it would be easier to lash out. Choosing stillness when noise surrounds you. Protecting your vision not with walls but with wisdom. There's nothing louder than a life that speaks through discipline. People will always try to categorize what they don't understand. They'll assign motives, project insecurities, and draw conclusions from fragments. That is not your concern. You are not responsible for managing their narratives. You are responsible for protecting your peace. You are responsible for preserving your growth. Because what you're building isn't for show, it's for substance. You don't need an audience to make it real. You don't need validation to make it powerful. The strength of your vision lies in its ability to grow in silence, to mature in secret, to solidify away from noise and ego. When your life is led by purpose, not popularity, your steps begin to sharpen. You no longer walk in circles, seeking approval. You walk in straight lines toward alignment. You're not trying to be seen, you're trying to become. And becoming requires less talking and more doing. Less explaining, more executing. Less external focus, more internal clarity. Your path is yours, and no one else can walk it. That's why it's sacred. That's why it's private. Not because you're hiding, but because you are finally becoming whole without the interference of outside voices. Your silence confuses those who are addicted to attention. It threatens those who need chaos to feel alive. But for you, stillness is your strength. Solitude is your sanctuary, and discipline is your freedom. You no longer move to be noticed, you move to grow. You no longer speak to be heard, you speak to align. You no longer share for approval, you share from conviction. This is not isolation, this is elevation. It's choosing the higher ground, even when the lower path feels more comfortable. It's knowing who you are without needing everyone else to. There will always be people who misjudge your quiet. Let them. They do not know the battles you've fought, the tears you've swallowed, the sacrifices you've made in the dark. But one day, they will see the result, and they will understand. Not because you told them, but because your life will reflect it. Your energy will speak. Your consistency will echo. Your peace will radiate. That's the reward of silence. It doesn't demand attention. It earns respect. And when your life begins to reflect the quiet choices you made in secret, no explanation will be needed. You will have become the message. Growth is not always loud. Sometimes it sounds like silence. Like waking up with a deeper sense of peace, not needing to convince anyone of your worth. Like realizing your focus has shifted from proving yourself to improving yourself. Like moving through life with quiet intention, because noise no longer impresses you. Only purpose does. The deeper you go within, the less you feel the urge to explain what you're doing. You begin to understand that not everyone deserves access to your process, because not everyone can handle the weight of your calling. What you're building requires protection, not promotion. You don't owe anyone a window into your becoming. You don't have to announce every step to prove you're moving. Real elevation happens in the dark, when the crowd is gone, when the applause fades, when the only voice left is the one inside you, urging you not to give up. And in those moments, you either collapse under the pressure, or you rise above the need. You learn to build without a stage. You learn to heal without an audience. You learn to thrive in silence, because that silence becomes your sanctuary. And from that place, you don't just grow, you transform. The desire to be understood fades when you finally understand yourself. You stop translating your heart for people who only listen with judgment. You stop performing your progress for those who would rather watch you fail. And you start honoring the quiet power of discretion. You start drawing boundaries not from fear but from clarity, because you know who you are, and you know what you carry, and you've stopped casting pearls before those who don't value them. That's maturity. That's strength. That's real inner freedom. When you release the need to be seen, you become unstoppable. No longer swayed by opinions, no longer chasing recognition. You begin to walk with unshakable intention. You no longer ask for directions from people who've never been where you're going. You listen to the still voice within, the one that whispers in the quiet when everyone else is silent. That voice doesn't need a crowd. It needs your trust. And when you trust it, you find a path that isn't crowded, because few are willing to walk it. But it's the path that leads to your highest self. Let people misread you. Let them underestimate what they can't see. They will only notice when the results speak so clearly that silence is no longer required. But by then, you won't even care for recognition. You'll be too focused on your purpose, too anchored in your peace, too aligned to be distracted. And that, more than anything, is your power. Because the ones who build in silence are the ones who last. Not because they shouted, but because they stayed. Consistent, grounded, focused. Let your silence shape you, and let your life speak. Not everyone will understand your silence, but that's never been your responsibility. You weren't created to be consumed, explained, or approved. You were created to evolve, to refine, to rise above distractions that dilute your focus. When you stop trying to be visible in every room, you start becoming powerful in the right ones. That's where real momentum lives, in the places most people never see. Growth isn't always loud, and value isn't always obvious. But when you choose privacy over performance, discipline over display, you unlock the part of yourself that's no longer driven by external validation. You become rooted, steady, unshaken. There's a quiet kind of confidence that comes from mastering the art of being unknown. Not unseen, but undisturbed. You don't have to share your progress to prove you have purpose. The strongest people aren't always the most visible. They're the ones who've learned that visibility is not the goal. Alignment is. It takes courage to hold your vision close, to keep building without updates, to stay consistent without applause. But that's where the real work happens, when no one's watching. When it's just you, your calling, and your willingness to keep going. The most dangerous version of you is the one that doesn't need to be noticed. That version is focused. That version is intentional. That version refuses to waste time explaining a mission that's still being built. Because the ones who keep things sacred understand something simple. Not every seed belongs in public soil. Some things grow best when they're guarded, when they're given space to take root before being exposed to opinions. And when your dreams are in their earliest stages, you have to protect them like that, not out of fear but out of wisdom. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to announce your healing, your progress, your next move. You just need to stay in alignment with what's real for you. Because when you stop performing, you start transforming. When you stop speaking just to be heard, you begin listening for what matters. That's when your intuition sharpens. That's when your energy clears. That's when you move differently. Not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you're finally respecting yourself. Let people wonder. Let them assume you have nothing to defend. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be at peace with yourself. That's the highest form of clarity, to live without the need for constant exposure. Your journey is not entertainment, it's elevation. And elevation often requires isolation, not because you're hiding, but because you're preparing, because you're growing beyond the surface, because you're building a life that doesn't need to be posted to be real. The more you detach from the noise, the more you rise, quietly, powerfully, permanently. Let the silence mold you. Let your discipline define you. Let your life speak so loudly that words are no longer necessary.